Hello and welcome to another iteration of our top discussions for this week. So this will be the one for week of 219. So coming out a day early. Yep, you're getting this a little bit earlier if you're watching this on YouTube. So definitely subscribe there, and that way you get notified when I go live for this, because I think running through this is a lot of fun. So I'm excited for this, and I hope we can have a little fun. So if you're watching, definitely leave some comments if you want to, and I'm curious what you have to say about some of these stories. So let's go ahead and dive into it, because obviously it's a little cold this week, and if you're like I am, you're probably digging out of a boatload of snow. And if you're in the South, I'm definitely going to be praying for you, because I know you got hit pretty hard unexpectedly. So hopefully things are going well in Texas, Tennessee, etc. down there, because I know I have family down there, and hoping everyone's doing okay and staying safe. But with Valentine's Day this week, I figured I'd celebrate with something different than chocolates and flowers for the top discussions. I wanted to highlight some of the great conversations that I ran into, just probably because it's Valentine's Day, and so people are doing some things about love, sex, nudity, and dating. And that's what we're going to be looking at, is pretty much, at least as far as the top podcasts go, for the most part. So the top one that I really enjoyed was kind of a callback to, if you remember, a couple weeks ago, I had a conversation with Matt Frad, and I cannot remember the artist's name. His name is Jonathan, and it's a French last name, and I can't think of it right now. But he's an iconographer, and they were talking about nudity in art, and especially in Catholic art. And I found it really interesting. And so Spencer Clavin actually had his latest episode of Young Heretics discuss nudity in art. And he's Protestant, he's the son of an artist. And so it's definitely a different perspective than what I think you got from the more kind of conservative traditional Catholics. And I think both of them gave a really good argument on the side of quelling nudity in art on one side. And even Matt Frad was not necessarily on board as far as the iconographer was. And again, I wish I could remember his name, but that's what happens when you go live, is you can't look things up very well, especially when you don't have a team like some people do. But the iconographer was much more against it. And then Spencer had a really good argument in his episode on Young Heretics of why it can be good. And so, and it can be well done. And I like that it started off with, what's the difference, or why is Game of Thrones better than WAP? And, if you really want to hear an Oxford educated scholar talk about WAP, then check out this episode of the podcast. But really, he goes much farther beyond that and dives into what the purpose of nudity in art could be, and where it goes too far, and how do we know? How do we find those lines of when it becomes pornographic, when it becomes gross, or when it's puritanical? So definitely a great conversation there. Check that out. And then also Ryan Pauly discussed in his podcast how he responds to the objection that love is love. And you can make, I think, the case for why gay people should be able to get married. But I think the love is love is just a terrible, terrible argument. And he shows why that's the case, and how we have standards for who can have sex with whom in our society. We have those. And when you break it down and you see what people say is okay and what is not okay, there's some contradictions there. It's okay here, but not here. And well, that's because of the, and if you, once you kind of get outside of the idea that sex is for married people with their spouse, right? Not with other people who are not their spouse. Once you get outside that standard that sex is between a man and a woman who are married, and having sex with their spouse, then it starts to really have a lot of contradictions and weird lines being drawn. So definitely check out that as well, because it was a fantastic episode, and I definitely learned a lot myself of how to answer those objections. I think I was on board with his ideas, but learning how to talk about that was great. And lots of great social chatter happening too this week. I started a little trend on Twitter, not to brag, about posting 5 books that really impacted the way you think about things, really impacted your life, and then tagging 5 people in that to get them on it as well. And it seemed like it really caught fire. It seemed like there was a lot of people sharing that and giving their ideas. So if you need to add to your reading list, there's a link to my post, and then there's a link to where you can search that. If you just search the if you just search Twitter for the 5 books, you should be able to find it. But if you need to, you can check it out in the blog post or in the newsletter if you're subscribed there. And then another great video from Lauren Chin, the conservative millennial. She was talking about some dating advice that she had, and I really enjoyed the advice she gave. My mom always said, never date someone who couldn't be your mate, right? It's kind of clunky, but it rhymed. And I'm probably butchering it as well because I was a 16-year-old kid when she was telling me this and probably not listening to her that well. But Lauren Chen gives that advice of be serious about your relationships and talk about the serious things so that you're not wasting your time. And I definitely think this short little video is a great way from PragerU, to be able to offer some good advice very quickly and share that with some people who may need to hear it. So definitely check that out. And then lastly, some of my conversations. I mentioned already that I had the episode on the golden mean that's done really well. I've had some good responses there. So definitely check that out. It's in the show notes or in the blog post for this today. And also, I had two great interviews actually. One with Joe Little from Little Joe's Conservative Corner, a fun conversation about how to talk about things with people you disagree with. And he obviously is a conservative, but really trying to figure out how we can stay together as a nation, because we need to be able to have tough conversations without everything devolving into yelling, screaming, and ad hominem. And how do we go about having those conversations, and where do we find those? Because that's the other problem is you can be willing to have a conversation, but how do you find people who are also willing to do the same thing? And then I was also on a Smart Young Woman's podcast to discuss starting on the path to financial freedom. And the podcast I'm going to pull up the name here so I can share that with you as well. But I did a 4-part series, episodes 99 through 102 on my podcast. So if you want to dive in deeper, obviously that's 4 podcast series with 30 plus minute podcasts about how I was able to graduate college with no student loans, with no debt on that, and able to buy a house as I did it, and what I did to do that, and how other people can as well. But the podcast it was just a 15-minute overview and some pieces of advice there is, hey, it's Aoazany, Aoazany here. So, and it was interesting. She seems like she's doing great stuff. So definitely check out her podcast as well, because it's great to see younger people getting into the conversation as well. And I think she might be a teenager. At least she sounded fairly young. If I'm wrong, I feel bad, but I've not actually met her face to face, so I'm not actually sure about that. But that was definitely a great conversation as well. And so if you are out there listening to this or watching this and you see some great conversations, feel free to drop them in the comments. I'm always curious to find out about new things. If you are saying, hey, here's a podcast, Twitter account, anything like that I should be checking out, YouTube channel, let me know, because I'm curious to hear what you have to say. Because really, I think that a huge part of the conversation for our generation is not just me talking, but finding people out there who are willing to engage and bringing ideas to each other's attention, because that's what it's all about, is finding the best ideas and arguing together and having discussions to be able to come to truth. And that's what this is about, is solving the problems of today with the wisdom of the past. So if you want to do that and you want to join me in this, definitely subscribe. If you're watching this on YouTube, if you're a podcast person, you can find me anywhere podcasts are. You can subscribe there and go to conversationfourgeneration.com to check out more about what I have going on. I have my newsletter, which is what this is a rundown of. So conversationfourgeneration.com/newsletter to sign up for that. And if you want to get in early on some of the courses that I'm going to be rolling out, go to conversationfourgeneration.com/courses to kind of just let me know that you're interested. And that way I have kind of a list of people who I know are interested in certain courses that I'm thinking about doing, and I know how to prioritize which ones to work out first. So let me know what you think. let me go there to subscribe to the newsletter and to let me know if you're interested in the courses. And thank you for listening to this episode, or tuning in, really. I guess it's not listening because it's not a podcast. I'm just so used to doing that. Thank you for tuning in here at this rundown of the top discussions this week for February 19th. And let me know if you find anything else. Thank you for joining me in the conversation of our generation. Let's get the dialogue going. I'll talk to you next time.